Okay, we're back here. In this video clip, I want to take you through really an overview of the course. There's a handout. It's available on the course website, so if you don't have that printed out or maybe just get it up on the screen so you can see it while you watch it, it'd be helpful to follow along. You don't have to. You can just sort of get a sense of what we'll be doing in this course, assignments, etc., etc. So on the handout, first thing or near the top, you'll see, besides my information, is the quote from Einstein we ended with last time. So let's just remind ourselves about that one more time. The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. One cannot help but be in awe when one contemplates the mystery of eternity, of life, of the marvelous structure of reality. It is enough if one tries to comprehend only a little bit of this mystery every day. And certainly one of the goals for our course is if you want to be more of that type of person, we will try to lead you through to a deeper understanding of this special theory of relativity and some of the implications it has for how we think about space and time and some of the weirdness that comes about because of that, the strange things it predicts and strange paradoxes. So first thing, just to, you can, if you have the handout, you can see the course description. Again, we're trying to understand Einstein. So you might ask, what does it mean to understand Einstein? Is it partly understanding his scientific ideas? That's certainly true. But it's also understanding where did those ideas come from? What was Einstein himself like? How did it all come together in the so-called miracle year that we mentioned last time in the first video clip? So our goal, as it says here, is to go behind the myth-making, beyond the popularized presentations of relativity. Some of you may have read those articles and perhaps books and maybe even seen videos or documentaries and things like that. And they can give you a good basic understanding, idea of what this is all about. We want to go deeper than that. We want a deeper understanding of what this is all about, what Einstein was all about, what these strange paradoxes and predictions are in terms of the theory. So some of the questions we'll address: how did Einstein come up with his ideas? What was the nature of his genius? What is the meaning of relativity? What's special about the special theory of relativity? Why did the theory initially seem to be dead on arrival? It was not universally acclaimed as a great breakthrough at first. What does it mean to say that time is the fourth dimension? You hear that all the time, maybe in science fiction circumstances and so on. So what does that really mean? Can time actually run more slowly for one person than for another? And the size of things change depending on their velocity, their relative velocity. Seems ridiculous that something like that could happen. Is time travel possible? And if so, how? I'll give you a heads up. The answer is yes, in certain circumstances. Time travel is possible, and so we'll explore that. Why can't things travel faster than the speed of light? You've heard maybe speed of light as a universal speed limit. Well, why? What would happen if something went faster? Is it possible to travel to the center of the galaxy, which is about 30,000 light years away, and return in one lifetime? Again, that would seem preposterous because if it's 30,000 light years away, 1 light year is the distance light travels in 1 year. So it takes light, a beam of light, 30,000 years to get there. And even if we could go as fast, therefore, as that light, it seems like 30,000 years it would take us to get there and then back again, maybe another 30,000 years. We'll find that it's a little stranger than that, actually. Is there any evidence that definitively confirms the theory, or is it just mainly speculation? Why didn't Einstein win the Nobel Prize for his theory of relativity? And other questions as well. So those are some of the things we'll be looking at. So if any of those really grab your attention, grab your curiosity, then again, this would be a good course for you. A little bit about me there. You can see, like I mentioned in the first clip, I'm an academic director at Stanford. My background is I have a PhD from UC Berkeley in the history of science. Also have a master's degree in physics and another master's degree in interdisciplinary studies and sort of philosophy of science and so on and so forth with that. So before coming to Stanford, I taught for a number of years at UC Berkeley and also UC Davis, not only history of science and history of technology, but also some engineering courses, computer science, and things like that. But that's beside the point, because that's not what we're covering here in this course. Okay, prerequisites for the course. This course is open to anybody. It's open to the general public. In terms of knowledge, you just have to have a curious, open mind and also the desire to really think about things a little more carefully than perhaps we usually do. You'll be asking also, is there any math involved in this? In fact, Stephen Hawking, the great theoretical physicist who suffers from wasting disease, so he's in the wheelchair, has published a number of bestsellers, sort of has taken over as an icon of science in many respects from Einstein, in earlier years. He, in his one of his best-selling books, he was advised not to include any equations, because for every equation you put into the book, he was told, your audience will be cut in half. And so we could certainly teach the special theory of relativity without any equations, but again, we need to go a little deeper than that. And so there will be some math involved, there will be some equations, but it's very basic math, basic algebra, and even more than that, as we'll talk about in a minute, you have the option really to skip over the math. So if you're math phobic, you really shouldn't be, but if you are, you can still take the course and get a lot out of it. So those are some of the prerequisites. Required materials. You have to buy anything for this course, and the answer is no, you don't have to buy anything. All the material, or nearly all the material, all the required material certainly, will be either done via video clips or via handouts. We will be, for one of the assignments, actually looking at Einstein's original paper on the special theory of relativity. That wasn't actually the name of the paper, but we'll look at it. It's surprisingly readable. There is some math in it. We'll skip over those parts just so you get a general sense of his argument. That's available online. There also will be one recommended reading on a profile of the young Einstein that I wrote and published via Amazon Direct Publishing, and we'll talk more about how you can access that. It's relatively inexpensive, $2.99 U.S. currency, or depending on where you might be around the world, whatever currency is your local currency, they're the equivalent in that. So we'll talk more about that at a later time. But that's really, those are the outside materials. We'll need the original Einstein paper available online, and not required, but a recommended reading. So if the $2.99 is a burden for you, and it very well could be, or for whatever reason you decide not to read that, that's fine. Again, it is recommended but not required. So those are required materials. What about required commitment? What are you getting yourself into here? Well, clearly it depends on what you want to get out of the course. A certain minimum level of commitment is required. Most weeks there'll probably be 1 to 3 hours worth of video clips, not an hour long, usually about 5 to 20 minutes each clip. There'll be some assessment quizzes, short assessment quizzes that go along with each video clip just to test your understanding. Did I really understand the key points in each one? Many of the clips also will have what I call priming the brain or engaging the brain questions to sort of get those mental juices flowing. In fact, studies have shown that when you think about something, even if you don't understand the details, if you're sort of lost, if you think about something before you listen to a video clip or attend a lecture or something like that, for whatever reason, our brains work better, and we understand more, and we retain more. So that's one of the reasons we have these sort of priming the brain questions or engaging the brain questions to ponder. So really the minimum level of equipment, probably 2 to 4 hours a week or so. It's an 8-week course. Could probably do it in 6 weeks, but I expanded it to 8 weeks mainly because I didn't want you to feel rushed. We'll talk about the importance of not rushing through the material in a later video clip. In fact, the one after this one, when we talk about how to succeed in this course, or actually in any course like it. But it just, again, I know all of you have many other things going on. You don't have a huge amount of time maybe you can devote this course. So we expanded it just slightly out to 8 weeks. Then we also have 3 different approaches you can take to the course, and so that's on the next page, approaches and assignments. One of 3 approaches. You can take a more quantitative approach to the material, you can take a more qualitative approach to the material, or you can just say simply, I want to audit the course. I want to take an auditing approach. And as you can see on the second page here, we go into details of the assignments for each. I won't hit all those details because you can read it as well as I can stand here and read it, or you can fast forward, I suppose, through this part. But I do want to hit the main points so that we're all on the same page of what each approach is. So the more quantitative approach really is designed for those of you who want the deepest understanding of the special theory of relativity within the context of this course. Okay, this is an introductory course. There are more advanced courses that could be taught. But I want to get that deepest understanding because you can get a good understanding via qualitative approach, but the theory is a mathematical theory. And so to really understand it, we need to understand some of the underlying mathematics. And like I said before, it's pretty basic algebra is what's involved. So nothing too esoteric or advanced in terms of the math. And that we'll actually have a video clip that you can watch with a math review, sort of reviewing the key things you'll need for the math if it's been a while since you've thought about those things. So if you elect this more quantitative approach, what will you be doing? Well, you'll be watching the video clips each week, thinking about those priming the brain, engaging the brain questions, doing the assessment quizzes after each of, or most of the video clips will have those. We'll also have a weekly review quiz and on that week's material, and so you'll be doing that as well. And then there'll be weekly problem sets, usually 3 to 5 problems, not really difficult problems necessarily, but again, just working through some of the things we have introduced that week in usually a more quantitative fashion. And really, that's how you understand it, by struggling with it and delving into it that way. So do weekly problem sets. In terms of readings, there is the recommended reading, the profile on the young Einstein, that really will fill out your picture of Einstein, what's going on in his life at this time period, and also some of the conceptual issues and other things that were going on, other people who were working on similar things as Einstein at the time. And that's actually in week 1, so that's coming up with that, and we'll talk more about that again in a later video clip. The required reading in week 2 is actually to read Einstein's original paper, not to go into all the math and physics involved, because even though it's fairly basic, it's beyond the level of this class. But we want to get an idea of his argument. What are his main points he's trying to make? So we'll look at that. So that's required reading. And then in week 3, we'll actually be doing a survey. And this is optional for everybody in the class. You don't have to participate in this. But it's sort of an ask a friend or a person on the street survey, where we're just going to ask a few questions about Einstein. So maybe go to 5 of your friends and ask, do you know who Albert Einstein is? And if so, when you hear his name, what words pop into mind, or what themes, and so on and so forth. So a very short survey like that. And then we'll try to aggregate all those responses on the website so we can see what we get sort of from a worldwide informal, certainly an informal survey of what people think about Einstein if they have heard of him. And then another option for those of you taking a more quantitative approach actually is to do some of the qualitative work as well, a creative project, and so we'll talk about that in a minute. But for the most part, the quantitative approach is view the video clips, do the assessment quizzes, do the weekly review quizzes, and do the weekly problem sets. So it adds a few extra hours a week to it, but we're not talking about probably not 10 or 15 hours, but in total, maybe 5 to 8 hours a week you'll be working on this. And then, of course, the recommended reading the profile of the young Einstein and Einstein's original paper. So that's the more quantitative approach. Secondly, you can take a more qualitative approach. You may say, I don't want to deal with the math. That's fine. But I really do want a better understanding. And so this is what this approach would be good for. So what do you do if you take that approach? Well, again, you watch each week's video clips. You do the assessment quizzes. The assessment quizzes will be focused, even though there'll be math involved in some of those video clips, you can skip over that part. That's a great thing, of course, about video clips. You can just fast forward through that, or just sort of watch it, get a general idea without following all the details, and then get the key issues, key results at the end. So the quizzes will try to focus on those conceptual elements. So watch the video clips, do the assessment quizzes, do the weekly review quizzes, focusing on the key results and concepts. And then the big thing, perhaps, for the qualitative approach is to do a creative project relating to the young Einstein and or the special theory of relativity. And really, this is just wide open. I wanted to leave it wide open so you can be as creative as you like. There'll be some guidelines and parameters you have to work within. It could be a video, a poem, musical piece, artwork, animation, etc., etc., etc. With that, it can be instructional, it can be serious, it can be humorous, it can be dramatic. You can do some combination of those. It's really up to you where you want to go with that and what you'd like to do. And we'll give out further guidelines in a later handout and talk more about that. So that's sort of the centerpiece of the qualitative approach. And then also the recommended reading, the profile on young Einstein, coming up really the first week. And Einstein's 1905 paper on the special theory of relativity, not required for the qualitative approach, but recommended, optional, so you can take a look at that as well. And then the Ask a Friend or Person on the Street survey, that's also optional if you want to participate in that. So we have the more quantitative approach, so really the big difference between them, a few minor differences, but the big difference in the quantitative approach, you're doing the weekly problem sets. In the qualitative approach, you are doing a creative project. You can do both if you like as well. And then thirdly would be the auditing approach to the course, really designed for those of you who want to learn more about Einstein, fascinated by Einstein, fascinated by some of these ideas and the implications of them, but for whatever reason, maybe you don't have time, or for whatever reason, you don't want to do all the assignments. You can more or less pick and choose what you like to do. So watch the video clips as desired. You can take the assessment quizzes, the online multiple choice quizzes. I'd still recommend reading the profile. You don't have to, but the profile on the young Einstein will, may be the best thing for you because it will give you some broader insights into the life and work of Einstein at this time period. You're also welcome to do the Ask a Friend, Person on the Street survey when we get to that. And you're welcome to do a creative project as well. If you maybe even just want to focus on that, do a couple of the other things, focus on that, fine. So, and you can switch back and forth as well. Obviously, if you're doing the auditing approach for the first several weeks, it's hard to switch to one of the others because you will have missed a fair amount of work. But if you start off in the quantitative approach, the more quantitative approach, or the more qualitative approach, and then say, I think that's enough for me after several weeks, life happens, and you don't quite have as much time as you want to, you can certainly still do the auditing approach. And you don't have to inform me or anything like that. For those of you who do the more quantitative approach and complete the required assignments for that, or do the more qualitative approach and do the assignments for that, you'll get a certificate of completion. You do have to meet a certain minimum level on the quizzes and so on and so forth, but that will be available. In terms of the creative project, it's just graded credit, no credit. If you do it and clearly you put a little time into it and some thought into it, then, then great. We'll probably be posting those in many cases, perhaps on some place like YouTube or perhaps on the course website as well. More details to come on that. Okay, so those are the three approaches to the course. Let's take a quick look at the course outline, where we're going. So again, it's in your handout here. We're sort of in week 0, as it were, of the 8 weeks. This is the introduction phase. So we did a video clip on why take this course. This video clip is the overview of the course. The next video clip will be how to succeed in this course, giving you some tips to help you understand the material better, actually in this course or any course. We'll have a little bit on the rules of engagement, especially in discussion forums and for the course in the online website. And then a quick math review for those of you who want to look at that. So that's the introductory part. Then, okay, we said 8 weeks. Week 1, we'll look at Einstein in context. Every week we'll have Einstein quotes of the week. We'll say a few words about those, give us some things to think about perhaps. And then we'll have a thought experiment to think about. We'll do a couple of those throughout the course, in addition to our engaging the brain, priming the brain type questions. 2 main things, however, we'll look at in week 1. We want to look at physics circa 1900. What was going on in physics about 1900 when Einstein was working on a special theory of relativity, or some of the ideas around that up until 1905. And then what was Einstein himself doing around 1900, 1905? What was his life like? So we won't spend a whole lot of time on that, but we do want to get a better understanding of Einstein, the person, that all of this was not just happening in some vacuum where he was sitting in a room someplace thinking great thoughts and writing stuff down on paper, equations and scribbles and things like that. So that's week 1, Einstein in context. Then we'll turn more towards the basic concepts of the theory and want to really spend some time laying good foundations. We don't want to jump into this too quickly because even though these are simple basic notions of time and length, it can be very easy to get confused with these things, as we'll see later on. So we'll talk about what is an event in space and time, how do clocks factor into this, what role do they play, what's this idea of a reference frame. And so this is when we'll actually look at his June 1905 paper, which was entitled On the Electrodynamics of Moving Bodies, whatever that means, but essentially was his special theory of relativity paper. And again, try to lay the foundation for some of the key concepts we'll be using there. And then look at Einstein's starting point. He actually developed this theory based on 2 postulates or principles. He said, we're going to take these 2 postulates as true, and in fact, as we'll learn, they seem to be contradictory. And in fact, that was a stumbling block for Einstein for a long time. He looked at this, he said, yes, this is true, this principle is true. He looked at this one, he said, yes, this principle is true. But clearly, they seem to contradict each other in certain ways. And he couldn't overcome it until a friend of his actually gave him a key insight as they were walking and talking one day, perhaps during lunch, during the lunch break at the patent office. This friend also worked at the patent office. The next day, Einstein came back and said, I've got it. And later, he said he realized that time was suspect. Time was suspect. And so we'll definitely be thinking about that, what that means, and what was his breakthrough. Then in week 3, we've titled that Ethereal Problems and Solutions. This whole notion of the context. Why was Einstein having such problem understanding what was going on here? Why were other people having problems understanding what was going on with the so-called luminiferous ether? It's the medium by which light waves were presumed to travel, just like water waves travel through water. If light was a wave, as was well understood, then it must travel through some medium as well. And that medium was known as the ether, or in fancier terms, the luminiferous ether. So we need to have a little understanding of what does that mean and what were the implications and why were people puzzled by trying to put all this together. So we'll look at a couple famous experiments. One, the Michelson-Morley experiment. Another experiment involving so-called stellar aberration. And just try to get an idea of what's that all about. And then some of the solutions that people came up with before Einstein actually came along and just sort of took a whole different approach to the problem. So that's laying the foundation. Then in week 4, the weirdness begins. And this is where we take Einstein's 2 postulates, his 2 principles, and say, okay, they seem contradictory, but let's take them both as true and see where we end up. And that's what he did. And that's where he realized that the notions of length and time they're not, in reality, they're not our common sense notions of how they work. So time is suspect, length is suspect, simultaneity, that 2 clocks can be simultaneous or 2 events maybe. 2 clocks can be synchronized, and therefore events can be simultaneous to one person, to another person who's moving with respect to those clocks. The clocks are not synchronized, and events are not simultaneous. So what's simultaneous to one person may not be simultaneous to to another person. Clocks that are synchronized to one person will not be synchronized to another person. And this really called into question the fundamental notions of space and time that people had held for centuries. So we'll look at that. And we'll look at some of the actual experimental evidence that this is not just some wild speculation, but it actually is true in the real world. Then in week 5, we've entitled that Space-Time Switching. We'll develop actually something called the Lorentz transformation. It's a mathematical tool that will make our lives easier when we're trying to figure out some of the issues and problems that we encounter in dealing with the special theory of relativity. We'll talk about the ultimate speed limit, why light, the speed of light is an ultimate speed limit. Then in week 6, we'll talk about, well, maybe can we break that ultimate speed limit? Is it possible, and what would happen if we break that ultimate speed limit? Week 7, we'll get into more paradoxes to ponder, including the famous twin paradox you may have heard about, where the idea is if you send somebody off in a spaceship at very fast velocity to another star system, and then they come back again, the theory seems to predict that if they're identical twins, that's why it's called the twin paradox, if one goes off and then comes back again, they will be younger than the twin who stays home. And yet it's like, well, isn't it just as far as the person in the spaceship, don't they just see the other twin going away from them and coming back again? Maybe they have their own spaceship, if you imagine 2 spaceships. So here's one. So one goes off this way and comes back. The other one goes off that way and comes back. It seems to be equivalent. What's going on there? Is it really true that one would be younger than another? So it seems like it's paradoxical. So we'll investigate that paradox and a few other paradoxes as well. And then week 8, to conclude, to the center of the galaxy and back. That notion, we introduced it with a question earlier. Could you actually travel to the center of the galaxy and back again in one lifetime as an astronaut on a spaceship, assuming we had a spaceship that could travel fast enough? So we'll look at that. We'll also come back to Earth in a sense and look at the reception of relativity. Why wasn't it universally acclaimed when Einstein first introduced it? Why was there a lot of skepticism, even derision? The president of the American Academy of Science actually said something to the effect that no one believes this garbage, that anybody could believe that time is different for one person than another person, or lengths change if you go at a fast enough speed, and so on and so forth with that. We'll look at Einstein's Nobel Prize, why he didn't win it for the theory of relativity, have some thoughts perhaps about the nature of genius, and then think about relativity beyond science, how it's used in popular culture. Have a few words about that. So hopefully by the end, we will have, whichever approach you take, whether you want to do the more quantitative approach or the more qualitative approach, or just take sort of an auditing approach, hopefully you will have a little better understanding of, as Einstein put it, sort of the mystery of the marvelous structure of reality. So that's an overview of the course. And again, all the details are in the handout. In the next video clip, we're going to look at some tips on how to succeed in the course, or really any course that you might be taking.